After years of silence, Richie Sambora has finally said what fans have long suspected, and it's not pretty. At 65, the former Bon Jovi guitarist is pulling back the curtain on the truth behind his split with Jon Bon Jovi. For decades, the band's brotherhood looked unbreakable, but behind the scenes, tension, ego, and heartbreak were tearing it apart. Now Sambora's explosive revelations are rewriting everything we thought we knew about rock's most famous duo. How did Richie Sambora and Jon Bon Jovi meet? Long before the stadium lights and screaming crowds, Richie Sambora and Jon Bon Jovi were just two hungry musicians hustling through the rough-and-tumble clubs of New Jersey. Both hailed from blue-collar roots, Richie from Woodbridge, Jon from Sayreville, towns where dreams were earned through sweat, not luck. Those streets shaped them, teaching grit, loyalty, and a relentless drive that would later pulse through every Bon Jovi anthem. Before fame, they were just two kids lugging guitars through freezing nights, playing wherever someone would listen. Smoky bars, VFW halls, and backyard parties. Jon had been fronting the Wild Ones, while Richie sharpened his craft with groups like Message, earning a name as one of Jersey's most passionate young guitarists. What drew them together wasn't fame or money. It was mutual respect for music that meant something. Both were inspired by Bruce Springsteen's storytelling and Led Zeppelin's thunderous soul, chasing the idea that rock could be both grand and deeply human. When Richie officially joined Bon Jovi in 1983, it wasn't just another lineup change, it was the spark that transformed a decent band into something iconic. His entry gave Bon Jovi its heartbeat, that mix of blues grit, melodic fire, and emotional sincerity that became their trademark. Their early shows, especially at spots like the Fast Lane in Asbury Park, revealed an almost telepathic chemistry. Jon's soaring voice carried the dream. Richie's guitar gave it depth and vulnerability. He wasn't just a lead guitarist. He was a builder, layering harmonies and shaping arrangements that elevated the songs beyond radio rock. Together, they created moments that would define a generation. Richie's talkbox solo on Livin' on a Prayer, the rugged riffs of Wanted Dead or Alive, and the aching emotion of I'll Be There for You. Offstage, they were brothers in every sense, laughing in dressing rooms, swapping stories on endless bus rides, grounding each other in the chaos of sudden superstardom. Richie became Jon's emotional counterbalance, the laid-back, soulful yin to Jon's driven, frontman yang. Yet, within that brotherhood, an invisible divide began to grow. The spotlight increasingly followed Jon. Whether by management strategy or natural charisma, he became the face of Bon Jovi, while Richie remained in the shadows, quietly co-writing and crafting the sound that made them legends. Still, in those early years, none of that mattered much. They were two Jersey boys chasing lightning, writing, jamming, and pouring every ounce of themselves into music that spoke to ordinary people with extraordinary hearts. It was a once-in-a-lifetime rhythm that took them from garage bands to global stages, from small-town dreamers to icons of rock's golden age. By the mid-1980s, as Bon Jovi was sculpting its unmistakable identity, Richie Sambora had already become the soul of the band's sound. He wasn't just a guitarist, he was a storyteller with 6 strings, shaping the emotional landscape that set Bon Jovi apart from every other band of that era. While the world was swept up in the excess and flash of glam metal, Sambora grounded the music in something deeper, a blend of blues, heartland grit, and melodic honesty. His tone was instantly recognizable, warm yet powerful, lyrical yet raw. Every bend, slide, and sustain carried intention, as if his guitar were translating feelings that words couldn't capture. His playing style was a bridge between worlds, combining the soul of the blues with the scale and swagger of arena rock. Where others chased speed and spectacle, Richie chased emotion. His solos weren't mere technical showcases. They were miniature stories with beginnings, middles, and ends. He knew how to make a guitar sing, cry, and sometimes even whisper. In songs like Never Say Goodbye and I'll Be There For You, his melodic phrasing gave the lyrics a heartbeat, amplifying Bon Jovi's vocal emotion with wordless intensity. Albums such as Slippery When Wet and New Jersey stand as monuments to that creative chemistry. John brought the charisma and pop sensibility, but Richie added texture and truth, a rawness that kept the band's radio hits from sounding hollow. His harmonies lifted the choruses higher, his riffs gave them muscle, and his solos added soul. When the band sang about love, loss, and resilience, Richie's guitar made you feel it. Perhaps his greatest gift wasn't flash, but restraint. He understood silence as well as sound, knowing when to let a single note hang in the air, when to let a rhythm breathe, when to step back so John's voice could shine. That sensitivity became the backbone of Bon Jovi's enduring appeal. Yet as fame grew, the spotlight tilted toward John. The frontman became the face, while Richie's genius often lived in the background. As Bon Jovi ascended to global superstardom, the fairy tale sheen began to crack. By the late 1980s, they were no longer the scrappy New Jersey band playing clubs. They were a worldwide phenomenon, selling out stadiums and dominating the charts. But behind the flashing lights and anthemic choruses, a quiet shift was taking place. Bon Jovi, long seen as the charismatic frontman, was evolving into the band's public identity, while Richie Sambora, once his equal in spirit and sound, began to fade into the background. What started as a natural frontman dynamic slowly hardened into hierarchy. Richie had always been more than just the guitarist. He was the emotional pulse, the co-writer behind the hits, the voice of balance when fame became suffocating. Yet as management, branding, and image became the machinery driving Bon Jovi forward, Richie's input in creative and business matters began to shrink. It wasn't open hostility, but a gradual erosion, the kind that quietly eats away at trust. He often felt his ideas brushed aside, his role reduced to support rather than partnership. While John carried the torch publicly, Richie was left grappling with the feeling that something sacred, their brotherhood, was slipping away. The relentless cycle of touring, recording, and promotion only deepened the divide. There was no time to pause or heal. The life of constant motion took its toll, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Behind the stage smiles, Richie battled addiction, fatigue, and the collapse of his marriage, each struggle pulling him further from the core of the band he helped shape. What once felt like a shared dream began to resemble a machine he no longer recognized. By the early 2000s, the bond that once defined Bon Jovi was running on fumes. The unspoken tension grew, and communication broke down. By 2013, when Richie Sambora quietly walked away mid-tour, it wasn't an impulsive rebellion. It was the inevitable conclusion of years of imbalance, exhaustion, and heartbreak. No explosion, no scandal, just a man finally stepping out of a shadow he never meant to stand in. In April 2013, the world of rock was shaken. Just hours before a sold-out Bon Jovi concert in Calgary, fans received shocking news. Richie Sambora would not be taking the stage. The official statement was brief and vague, personal reasons. But behind those two words lay years of exhaustion, heartache, and quiet disillusionment. For Richie, the break wasn't spontaneous. It was the inevitable moment when a man who'd carried too much for too long finally collapsed under the weight of it all. He had spent 3 decades living in the fast lane, touring endlessly, recording non-stop, and carrying the emotional core of a band that had grown more corporate than close. The road that once felt like home had become suffocating. The brotherhood he'd cherished in the early years was gone, replaced by meetings, deadlines, and a brand that seemed to value profit over passion. It got toxic, Richie would later admit, describing a band where music had become business and friendship had faded into formality. What truly pushed him over the edge, though, wasn't ego or money. It was family. His daughter, Ava, was growing up, and Richie felt the pull of fatherhood stronger than the lure of another tour. He'd missed too many moments already, lost too many nights to the grind. He realized that being present for her was worth more than any encore. Then came the final heartbreak. When Richie decided to step back, he expected understanding, or at least a conversation. Instead, he found out through the internet that he'd been replaced by guitarist Phil X. No phone call, no meeting, no goodbye. "It was like I disappeared," he later said. "Nobody even called." For a man who had poured his soul into Bon Jovi, that silence cut deeper than any argument. To the public, it was just another lineup change. But to Richie Sambora, it was the end of a lifelong dream, a band he helped build from Jersey bars to world stages, now moving on without a word. Behind the smiles and press releases, one truth lingered. Sometimes, the loudest goodbye is the one never spoken. As time passed, the real reason behind Richie Sambora's 2013 departure from Bon Jovi came into focus. And it had nothing to do with ego or feuds. It was love. After decades of living on tour buses and hotel rooms, Richie chose something far more personal than fame: fatherhood. "You don't get those years back," he reflected later. "Being a rock star didn't mean anything if I couldn't be a good dad." For years, he had balanced his life between sold-out arenas and the quiet ache of missing moments with his daughter, Ava, whom he shares with actress Heather Locklear. As Bon Jovi's relentless touring schedule stretched on, Richie realized he was losing something irreplaceable: time. The same determination that had driven him to stardom now drove him toward home. When he stepped away from the band, the world saw it as sudden, even scandalous. Fans were split. Some accused him of abandoning the group, while others saw his exit as an act of courage, a man finally choosing family over fame. For Richie, the decision was painfully clear. He had spent his entire adult life chasing applause, but he didn't want to miss his daughter growing up. He wasn't walking away from music. He was walking toward what truly mattered. "Music can wait," he said, "but fatherhood can't." In the years since, time has proven him right. Ava grew into a poised, creative, and accomplished young woman, and Richie never hid his pride. Their bond became unshakable, built not on gifts or fame, but on presence, laughter, and love. He's often said that stepping away from Bon Jovi was the hardest choice he ever made, yet the most rewarding. "I can play guitar forever," he mused, "but I only get one chance to be your dad." After Richie Sambora's sudden exit from Bon Jovi in 2013, a strange silence fell over the band. There were no public feuds, no scathing interviews, no explosive headlines, just an empty space where one of rock's most enduring partnerships had once thrived. Fans were left stunned and confused. How could a bond forged over 3 decades, one that produced some of the most iconic songs in rock history, simply end without a word? Behind the curtain, however, insiders whispered that tension had been simmering for years. Richie had long felt shut out of creative and business decisions, describing himself bitterly as a hired gun in a band he had helped build. "It stopped feeling like a band," he later said. "It started feeling like a corporation." The spark of brotherhood that once fueled their music had slowly been replaced by structure, management, and control. John, ever the frontman and leader, kept his focus on the band's future, not the fractures of the past. He chose silence, dignified but heavy. For a decade, that silence defined their story. Fans speculated endlessly, dissecting interviews, lyrics, and stage comments for clues, but neither man spoke. Until 2024, when Sambora finally broke his silence in interviews with Yahoo Entertainment and the New York Post. His words were raw and reflective. "I just disappeared, man. I ghosted," he admitted, finally owning the abruptness of his departure. He offered an apology to John, to the fans, and perhaps to himself. acknowledging that he should have handled things differently. Richie explained that his exit wasn't driven by ego or resentment, but by survival. He was exhausted, emotionally drained, and felt increasingly unheard within the group. "I had to step away," he said simply. His candor struck a chord with fans who had waited 10 years for answers. John did not respond publicly, but the apology marked a quiet turning point, not reconciliation, but release. After a decade of speculation, Richie's honesty brought a measure of peace to one of rock's most poignant, unfinished stories. What do you think about the relationship between Richie Sambora and John Bon Jovi? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.